When you listen to a person talk on YouTube or any other broadcast media, for that matter, you have to try and get a measure of what motivates them to say the things that they do, the reasoning behind it and what they want to see happen. And in this video, I want to try and do a little bit of that. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're well, thank you for joining me again. You know, I've just watched an interview over on Paul Thorpe's channel, and I'll leave a link in the description so you can go and see it. And that is one where Howard Cox reveals that he has resigned from Reform UK. I won't go into the reasons behind it, go and watch the interview. And to be quite honest, I didn't see that one coming. I was quite shocked to hear the reasons why. Now, all of this stuff that's coming out, all of this stuff about Tommy, all of this stuff about Howard Cox, Richard Tice putting his foot in his mouth and everything else, is building up to a great big crescendo. And that is one which will see the cause of change set back by a number of years if we allow this so-called rift to, exist. Now, going back to my motivation, I'm effectively politically homeless. I don't really support, even though I started off as a conservative, I don't really support a political party because I think they're all broken and I think the system doesn't work anymore. What I support is a cause or an idea or an action which will affect massive political change in this country. Because let's face it, and with what happened in Parliament yesterday, we know it doesn't work anymore. Is it reform? I like to think so. But let's analyse this. Let's go back a few years. Now, I live in what was called at the time the South Thanet constituency. I don't know if you remember the story of the bionic MP, the one that was very, very poorly in hospital and lost both his arms and both his legs, Craig McKinley. He served as the Conservative Member of Parliament for this area for a number of years. I've met his wife and his young daughter, and they're a lovely family. But in 2015, before McKinley's first term, Nigel Farage stood as leader of UKIP at the time in the seat, in the South Thanet seat. He, of course, lost. Now, in the build-up to that election, Farage was seen absolutely everywhere. He was walking the streets with his entourage, knocking on doors, talking to people, and his idea of, I suppose, what you could call hustings is going round to literally every local boozer in the area and talking to crowds of people. Now, there was a pub called the Old Childs. It's no longer there. It's a block of flats now. And Farage went there one night and spoke. And I always remember very distinctly when I turned up at the pub, he was outside with a couple of people having a fag. I thought, okay. And I sat there in the crowd and I listened. And he said everything that everybody wanted to hear about political change, what's wrong with the establishment, what needs to happen and what they can do to help us. And as it turned out, UKIP actually won the local council, Thanet District Council. And I thought, great, change can happen, change can happen. And like anything, that we find in politics, very quickly you discover that they don't do anything that they said to you that they would do, breaking their word, breaking their promises, or proving that they're no good. And then shortly after that, Nigel Farage resigns from UKIP as leader and disappears. And the UKIP-led Thanet District Council fell to pieces. There was infighting, all sorts of stuff. It was a mess. And UKIP was no more. And as a viable political force right now that can affect change right now, nah, I don't think they're going to be anywhere near it in the foreseeable future. And this is it, the future, folks. We're running out of time. We are running out of time. Anyway, along comes 2019, and Farage reappears as the leader of the Brexit Party. Now, the clue is in the name. They want to get Brexit over the line. And I was on reasonably friendly terms with a guy called Timothy Vince, and he was the one that was going to stand as the Brexit Party candidate for South Thanet. And we had many a conversation. I actually quite liked the guy. And one of the messages about the Brexit Party was the idea of political reform, a message that I really could get behind because that's what I wanted to see. So yet again, I thought, right, Farage is on his hobby horse. Let's go and see what happens. And I went to a meeting at the Walpole Bay Hotel, which is in Cliftonville, not far from me. And one of the speakers that night was Ben Habib, and he was there, and he literally laid everything out on the table and again told us all what we wanted to hear. The political merry-go-round. Yes, I'm going to vote for, the Brexit Party. And we know what happened. Farage, in a deal with the Conservatives, stood down a load of candidates all across the country in order to get Brexit done. A deal with Boris, whatever you want to call it. And one of those candidates was mine for South Thanet. To say I was enraged, to say I was disheartened, to say I was really pissed off are all understatements. I was. And I thought, Farage has done it again. And he disappears into the wilderness. Then we have the Reform Party, led by Richard Tice, until just before this recent general election. It was taken over again by Farage. And look what happens now. We've got 5 MPs in the House, and we've got half a chance of more MPs in the House. Now, reform represents what I've wanted for probably 20 years, in fact, come to think of it, and certainly more and more over the last decade at least. Proper political change. Farage broke my heart twice. And I'm willing to give it one more go. See what they can pull off, see what they can do. Because the alternative doesn't bear thinking about. It doesn't. Because if it turns out that it's Tory 2.0, if it turns out that it'll be a disaster, then I'm afraid other alternatives need looking at. Other alternatives need considering, don't they? What they will be, I guess we will find out at the time. But all of this, internal squabbling saying don't talk about Tommy Robinson or else, and members like Howard Cox resigning. I like Howard Cox. I've interviewed him on this channel. He's a nice bloke, very principled. It's not going to do the cause any good. All of this media messaging about Tommy Robinson really sticking the boot in. I've done my homework on Tommy Robinson, and you can see articles online, and you can read between the lines and know what's complete bullshit and what isn't. It's all in the messaging again. And Reform, namely the leaders of Reform, are making a complete mess of it, alienating thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people every single time they tweet something or open their mouth. And if we're not careful, we're going to end up with another situation that we saw in 2015 and 2019. Can we really, honestly, afford that time? Afford to waste that time? Afford to let this opportunity slip? Or are we going to just get caught up in our petty differences? What do you think? I told you my experience with Nigel Farage and his previous political incarnations, and the fact I'm willing to give it one more try. I'm going to do a comment readout on this video because I think some of the feedback that's inevitably going to come is important. Have a look at these videos, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Toodaloo.